Services Marketing, MKT 625, lecture number 37.
Assalamu alaikum Khawateen Hazrat. This is Wasim Ahsan, your instructor for the course Services Marketing, MKT 625 at the Virtual University of Pakistan. I welcome you to lecture number 37. We are in the process of learning what distribution is all about as it relates to services marketing. And we know so far that it is all about availability and accessibility. We have looked into the structure of distribution, and we also have learned about different options that we as service sellers could have available to us. And we can exercise any one of those depending on the circumstances that we are surrounded by. We also have looked into the impact of the advancements in the area of the information technology and telecommunication, and the impact those advancements have had on channels relating different industries. We have seen that the advancements have resulted in channel squeeze in relation to certain industries, and those also have resulted in channel expansion in relation to some. One industry which really has been negatively impacted by the advancements in telecommunication and information technology is the travel industry, in which travel agents seem to be not registering the kind of growth which they might have projected like 10 years ago. Because of the fact that many travelers are buying their tickets over the internet, the importance of the intermediaries in the shape of the travel agencies although remains as great as ever, but the expansion has not taken place the way it would have if internet was not around. And you know the reason, because of the expensive nature of this particular intermediary. Airlines have decided to go as much online for selling tickets as is possible. However, if we take the case of courier services and inventory management, we have seen that certain courier companies have registered a tremendous growth when it comes to controlling the function of supply chain. There are so many manufacturers in the world who have given the responsibility of their supply chain functions to courier services who really, with the help of advanced information technology, can manage inventory management on behalf of their clients and take over the control of the supply chain function. Because they are the ones who also happen to be in warehousing, and they are the ones who know the techniques of inventory management, especially when it comes to the application of information technology to that particular field, meaning inventory management, and then transportation, logistics, and shipment schedules, and so on and so forth. While I talk about the channel resizing in form of the channel squeeze and channel expansion, I really am tempted to talk about certain benefits which electronic channels can offer to service sellers. So in other words, in addition to the options that I talked about in the previous lecture, let me now talk about another option which we as service sellers have available to us, and that is the existence of electronic channels. These are getting quite popular with the time as it passes by, and we have seen there are certain industries which really are in the forefront of the usage of the information technology and internet and so on and so forth. The industries which really are worthy of mention are education, distance learning, information dissemination, banking and finance, music and video on demand. And you have seen that this particular channel of videos on demand has recently been kicked off in our market, and it offers the facility to customers of having an access to a huge store of DVDs and all related things in the area of the audios, the videos, the music, movies, so on and so forth. When it comes to distance learning, we know the kind of facilities which we enjoy because of the electronic channels. Let me talk about the benefits which electronic channels offer us. Well, there are quite a few ones, but the first one is that they do offer us the luxury of pre-designing and pre-producing our service product. By doing so, we can take care of the challenge of inseparability and non-standardization and also variability to a great extent, because we pre-produce our services. Just look at the example of distance learning. Everything is done in advance of the time this service is received by the recipients. And therefore, the challenge of the inseparability and variability is taken care of to a great extent. However, there are certain challenges which arise out of this mechanism, and I'll be talking about those when I start undertaking the challenges one by one. The next the benefit that we can enjoy is that of low cost. I think it is obvious that because of the tremendous outreach that any service provider can have, because of the internet facility, the cost of reaching prospects and customers is much less than it would have been, or it is, in case of interpersonal services. You take any example, may that be the video on demand or distance learning, and you can envision the kind of complexity involved in the interpersonal relationships by having more stores, by having different campuses, not just one, but more than one campus, in order to develop the outreach and in order to have all the students come to the campus and receive whatever we are distributing through these channels. So this is a huge benefit which services sellers can enjoy if they opt for electronic channels, if the service they are selling really offers them the opportunity of getting into this kind of mechanism. If the nature of service is such that electronic channels are ahead of time, there is no point getting into those, because those should be developed only if we think that we can be more efficient in offering the service, that we can save costs, and there is no compromise on quality. The third benefit which electronic channels offers us is that of customer convenience. I did talk about the factor of accessibility when it comes to distribution in services in particular. And what could be better than getting a service while you're sitting in the comfort of your home, or ordering something while you are in your office? Customers could have the luxury of the browsing and reaching for a particular channel or a particular website, and then taking their time to rationally think about the availability of these services, and then go for the one which they really look for or they really want, and then place the order from the vendor. Again, it not only is a convenience of accessibility, it also takes care of the factors that I talked about earlier, meaning it is not a face-to-face interaction, and therefore there is not going to be the challenge or the problem of inseparability where the marketing and the operations, the people have to work together as a team by proving it to the customer through their actions and deeds that they are one monolithic whole working for the goals of the company. When sellers are offering pre-designed and pre-produced services, they do not really have to face this kind of a challenge. They really run into different challenges, which I'll be talking about later, but the fact remains that it really works to the convenience of the customer. And do not forget the fact that customer has the luxury of getting onto the website any time of the day or night, meaning 24/7. Customers can reach vendors who are available 24/7 and therefore are in a position to entertain the orders placed by the customers. One great benefit and facility stems out of the same facility and benefit is another one which you might call customization. When customers go through websites and take their time in a very rational manner to think about the service they want, they also can get into what aspects of the service they really are looking for, and they can pick those which really suit them. If you as a student can pick all those courses which are part of the program which you want to pursue, then that really amounts to customizing the service offered by the university. So by the same token, when it comes to other services which can be customized or which are kind of the multi-natured services or the multi-dimensional services, by having the same basic nature, customers do have the facility of customizing and then ordering the service which they really want. Another benefit which is enjoyed by service sellers is that of quick feedback. By having electronic channels and the websites, they can really build into that a kind of a response mechanism which elicits customers' opinions quickly and problems which need to be looked into, so that the management can get into the recovery mode and to recover the problem immediately, and could also get some insights into learning the future behaviors. It all depends upon the ability of the management to come up with the right kind of response mechanism. And if they succeed in doing so, they really can enjoy this benefit as well. So in other words, what they can do is they can incorporate into the website a certain portion of the marketing research study. When that becomes part of a built-in program, it provides to the sellers quicker information and feedback on their customers. Now, these benefits are not without challenges, and we have to look into the kind of challenges which service providers do face while working with electronic channels. The first one is that they have to realize customers are very active and selective when it comes to the use of websites or browsing of the internet. It all depends on the customers which kind of a website they want to go to and whether they are interested or not, whether they are in a mood to interact with the company by getting into a certain program or a certain website. Customers are not passive or captive, just like they are while they watch a television, or they're sitting in a cinema hall, or they're going through a newspaper. They still have the option of not looking at the ad they are not really interested in, or walk out of the room if they are not really interested in a television commercial, but they still remain passive and captive. Passive in the sense that they have no means to interact with the provider. They just can think about the communication which is taking place between the provider and themselves, but they cannot react to that or can show their reaction back to the communicator. Whereas in terms of the web-based programs or websites, they certainly have this option. And it is because of that reason that service providers have got to be very careful while they come up with the websites they want to use as vehicles of distribution, because customers are selective. So in other words, they have to come up with the kind of websites which suit their taste, which arouse their interest, and which can keep them glued to those websites. And the fact is that many service providers are coming up with certain incentive programs in order to arouse customers' interest so that they can log on to the website created by service providers. And they offer you prizes, they get into certain kinds of contests so that you can win a prize, and so on and so forth. The other challenge which service providers face is very closely related to the one that I've just talked about, and that is they have to make their websites very interactive. May that be a website, or may that be an interactive television program, or may that be any other form of electronic vehicle which is the basis of the distribution of the particular service a seller is selling. Until the time it is made interactive, it will not have the element of credibility which is there when you talk with the providers face-to-face. For example, when you are talking with your professors face-to-face in the classroom environment, it is very different from the one which you are a part of now. So in order to make it more credible, more interesting, and more satisfying, you have to be able to interact with the university or the provider of the service. This is a great challenge which providers could have to overcome. And until the time they can make their programs or websites and all the vehicles of electronic means very attractive and interactive, they cannot succeed in initiating those kind of channels. The other challenge which providers face is that of customization. I did talk about the benefit of customization, but then it is not all that easy to come up with that kind of an optional approach. The fact is, if you are selling more than one service and you happen to be kind of a multi-service company, you have to go for customization. And through that customization, you offer your customers the opportunity of taking their time and be rational in their approach toward selecting the kind of service they really are interested in. So, in other words, the channels have to be made not only interactive and attractive, but also kind of customized in terms of making the service available so that it can arouse interest of customers, so that different people from different segments, or in other words, so that all segments of one can think that this is a service meant for them, and that they feel kind of enticed to get into the website or to get logged onto the program. The other challenge which service providers could have to face and surmount is that of price competition. The reason I talk about price competition is because in services, in general, the prices of competition are not immediately known to the customers while they walk into a service facility or into a service environment, because that particular environment is just about one brand. It does not carry competition. It is not the case of tangible goods where you walk into a supermarket and see all the tangible goods sitting side by side with each other. You can look into the price tags, draw comparisons, and then take your pick. That is not the case in services. However, electronic channels have made that also possible, because the customers can get into different websites and draw some comparisons about the pricing. This is the case happening with airlines. And the fact is that the price competition on the websites in relation to the air tickets has become quite very intensive. And because of that, there are a couple of sites that ask you, what is your preferred price for this particular travel route? If that is the kind of question asked by a particular provider, it really is a testament to the level of intense competition which prevails even on electronic channels. So customers have the facility of comparing prices and then again taking the time and then making the decision about a particular service which they want. And it is here where the importance of brand management and brand loyalty in particular comes in. So the question which really flashes into your mind is, what is it that providers should do in order to keep their customers who are really exposed to price competition in an environment in which they cannot be influenced by the providers? If it was a face-to-face interaction and the customer had a question about the pricing pattern, the provider or the front-end employee who's supposed to be very good at communication and understanding of the overall the service in its entirety, that does have an opportunity of satisfying the customer by talking about certain aspects which may be hidden to the customer or the customer was not really paying attention to, and customer getting convinced at the end of the conversation that yes, this is the right price. But here is a case of an environment in which the customer cannot be really influenced by the provider, because the customer either is sitting at home or is in the office. So the only thing which providers can do is to keep the service absolutely first class. And when I say that, it goes without saying they have to be very good at all those traditional ways and means whereby they deliver their service, because electronic channels complement those services. electronic channels have not yet overtaken the traditional means. And I have no way of projecting how long will it take before electronic channels could become the sole ways and means of distributing services. The fact remains that providers have got to be good at the delivery of service so that they have good reputation and so that they can have loyal customers who stick to the company and the service, and whenever they want, they go onto the website and order from the vendor their desired service. Another challenge which the providers face is to keep their website designs or the channel structure pretty simplified. If the design is complex and users feel kind of intimidated because they just do not know how to go about using that particular website, they will refrain from using that in the future. And therefore, it has to be made very simple and user-friendly so that they feel kind of attracted and enticed into using that particular website. This is a huge challenge, and it is something which has to be given due consideration. Yet another challenge for the providers is that they have to bring about a fundamental change in the behaviors of their customers. You know, we as providers have to convince our customers that this also exists as a means toward achieving their ends, which is to place an order for a service they want, and by getting onto the website, they can be equally comfortable and satisfied before the service is delivered to them or after the service has been delivered to them. I am referring to the pre-purchase process, the encounter, and also the post-purchase process. So as long as we can bring about a certain change in the fundamental thinking of our prospects, that this could be a good way of buying a service, we really can proliferate the use of the websites. And for that, we have to do our bit by doing so many different things that I've talked about. We have to make our sites interesting, interactive, simplified. And then there is another thing which is beyond the control of the providers, because that calls for kind of a collective effort, and that is the alignment of the very well coordinated efforts and relationships between service providers, the banks, and maybe courier services. Because when a service is provided, payment has to be made. So the challenge is how to make that payment. In advanced markets, everybody carries a credit card. This product is getting quite very popular in our market as well. But then we've got to come up with certain ways and means whereby people feel convinced that it is secure to use the credit card and make the payment. A payment challenge becomes more pronounced when service providers are dealing with the hybrid services. For example, a supplier supplying tangible goods and looking upon the service aspect as the predominant portion of the overall transaction. And that really is the case, because when you sell tangible goods online, you basically are providing a good service. And that is something which really entices the people to go online. Otherwise, those tangible goods are present on the open market as well. So the challenge of making payments either through a credit card or through some other means by involving the banks does remain a challenge. However, if you are selling a service which can be offered as a package, meaning a monthly package or a quarterly package, so much the better, because it does offer you the opportunity of facilitating your customers to pay you monthly or quarterly checks, maybe in advance, but that really can overcome the challenge which I was talking about. The fact remains that bringing about a change in the fundamental behavior of customers is a function of so many things, of which the role played by the providers is just one. After having talked about this particular option, we are now all set to start understanding the kind of strategies which we should employ in order to distribute services. Electronic channels certainly happen to be one of the options that we already have learned But what are the remaining strategies which generally are employed by service providers all over the world? Let's try to learn those one by one. Well, there basically are three different types of strategies. The one is the multi-site strategy, the other one is the multi-service strategy, and the third one is the multi-segment strategy. Once we have understood these strategies in their true essence, we really can go for a combination of these three. But the fact is that fundamentally we deal with these three strategic areas in order to distribute and manage our services. Multi-site strategy is the first one which any service provider deals with, because it is the growth and expansion of business. You do not stick to just one site all your life. A point has to come when you grow and expand. And when that happens, you go for another site. You look for an area which is optimal in terms of structural and segmental attractiveness and so on and so forth, meaning all the concepts that I've been talking about, and then go there to come up with the physical evidence that we create in line with expectations of our customers. So the multi-site strategy basically deals with more than one site. One note of caution here is that we have to take into consideration the growth factor very rationally. We should not really push growth and start having sites one after the other only because we really want to grow. We have to make sure that we still remain very efficient and that we can overcome the challenges of inseparability, the variability, and standardization. As long as we can do that, there is no stopping us, and we should go for more sites than one. And this is what you see in case of so many different services. May that be a fast food chain or a courier service or a bank or so on and so forth. All those are the multi-site strategic setups. They have something more than the site factor, and that's what I'm going to talk about right now. That comes under the ambit of the multi-service strategy. Multi-service strategy basically calls for your attention to develop more services than one. It is not just one side, it is more than one service. This is something which has to be the multi-site as well, because even if you are a one-site setup having multi-services, when you grow, you have to go for the multi-site. So in other words, what I'm saying is that when you are dealing with multi-service strategy, you are dealing with something which also happens to be the multi-site. And the basic idea here is to add more products to the fold of the products that you already are selling. However, there is one distinction which you have to make between a product being a core product and being a peripheral product. We have to understand the difference between the core and the peripheral. The core product is the mainstay of the company. So in other words, it is the main product which we sell. The main service which really is all about the existence of the company. And therefore, when we are considering adding another product because we want to be a multi-service company, we have to be very careful whether we are adding a core product or a peripheral product. We should be a little hesitant and think so many times over before adding another core service product. Why? Because it happens to be another line of business altogether. Like I said, the core product is the mainstay of the company. And if we are wanting to add another core product, we are talking about another business area altogether, which basically is the business development strategy. And it is not to say that we should not consider that. All I'm saying is a multi-service strategy basically offers us the facility of using the same environment for selling services which are very much related to the core and therefore happen to be the peripherals which derive certain benefits out of the core. And it is because of the existence of that core that we add those peripherals. And that is why I say that we should be hesitant to add another core product to the line of business, because that amounts to calling for confusion, that amounts to calling for certain challenges which may be undue. However, this is not to say that companies should not diversify. Diversification could be another strategy altogether, but here in the context of multi-service strategy, we should be confined to the peripherals. Let me now give you examples of the core products and peripheral products in order to make this concept very clear, because in the heat of ambition, when companies are growing, they do make mistakes of getting into areas which are not really close to their core. And that is why you hear about so many classical examples of the business failures only because they were miles and miles away from their core. A courier company wanting to get into a cleaning services for homes and offices is getting away from the core because it is adding something to its core which is operationally quite very diversified and away from what they're used to doing, and therefore should avoid that. However, if the same courier company is planning to get into another courier service which is about sending to your near and dear ones certain gifts, and by giving you the opportunity and facility of choosing those gifts from the available line with the courier itself, then it amounts to adding a peripheral product because the courier company already carries a certain select group of products from which you can pick one or a couple and then have the courier company send those to a friend of yours as a gift or a memento. That is an example of adding a peripheral service. Let me talk about another example which will clarify the distinction between the core product and the peripheral product. Let's talk about a company that specializes in offering ready-made offices, meaning it is in the line of developing business centers. And the core product of the company is the office environment, which it offers to all those the businesses or companies that do not really want to invest into their own physical environments, meaning they really want to keep the capital expenditure from incurring and would prefer to walk into that business center because they think they're going to be better served there. They will get all the facilities in terms of secretarial support, in terms of information technology support, electricity, air conditioning, so on and so forth. Now, it is not just the core product which this company thinks it should confine to because it already has invested heavily into developing the facility. And the fact is that they have a very modern and state-of-the-art front office which has some automated kind of programs, and that they may offer the opportunity to this business center to start offering another product which basically is a peripheral product, and that is a product known as virtual offices. Now also think for a while, because you are receiving virtual education, there could be companies that may not be able to afford physical existence in one particular office or in one particular area. Or think about the companies that are existing in that particular business center, but they may not be in a position to have more offices in other regions of the country. And they might be enticed to the idea of having a virtual office where calls will be answered in the name of their businesses, where calls will be forwarded to all those who have been designated as per the instructions of the customer, thereby giving the impression to the customers of those businesses that they have reached their physical offices. This is a classic example of a peripheral product which could be developed by this company by the shape of virtual offices. Now, this company may not stop there. It may also like to have the meeting rooms because it already has captive customers who would like to have meetings every once in a while, and they would need access to meeting rooms. So this company might like to develop meeting rooms and sell those meeting rooms on the basis of timing to the customers within the center. Yet another product which can be offered by this business center is that of video conferencing facility, thinking that these customers may like to go for video conferencing once in a while, and therefore we should not let these people go outside of the center, thereby providing them with the possibility of conducting video conferencing within the environs of that particular business center. So on the one hand, when they are offering so many facilities to their customers, they're adding peripheral products to their line, which happen to be line extensions, in very simple words. And these line extensions add to the revenue of the company and optimize growth of the company, because your overhead costs still remain the same. I mean, almost the same. Whereas your revenues could have the potential to grow manifold because you're selling so many peripheral products. So a multi-service strategy basically deals with adding the more services to the line which already exists. But where service providers have to be very careful is whether they are adding another core or they're adding peripherals. As long as they're adding peripherals, they should be comfortable because they're operating within the area in which they specialize, and they're not asking for undue operational challenges. They do not really have to define more and unique kind of operational positions. And that is the beauty of the multi-service strategy. The third strategy could be that of the multi-segment strategy. A multi-segment strategy basically is employed within those businesses which really want to bring about an equilibrium between supply and demand, meaning those facilities which are not fully utilized during a certain part of the day. For example, a cinema house or a wedding hall which remains kind of underutilized during the daytime. The activity takes place only in the evenings and late evenings, and therefore the providers get to think of how to utilize the capacity which is there. So in other words, the investment which already sits there by way of having that particular environment and all the assets that sit on the ground, providers have to have a better return on that particular investment. And therefore, they like to go for those the services which are destined toward different segments of the market and yet need that kind of facility to be the base of that particular service. So for example, a wedding hall getting into the business of providing meetings along with lunch facility during the daytime. There could be so many other examples which I would like to leave to your imagination in terms of thinking of all those which can draw your attention toward different segments by utilizing the same facility. But the fact remains that when you are employing this kind of a strategy, you certainly also have to face a few challenges because you are dealing with different demand structures. When you are dealing with a business house that is wanting to walk into your facility because they want to have the business meeting or a conference along with presentations and so on and so forth, you have to cater to their requirements, for which you also need to train different kind of staff or the same staff with different skills. So that is another challenge which providers could have to face and surmount. But then when it comes to utilizing your facility on which you already have invested a lot, it may not be a bad option to exercise. Another challenge which you have to surmount is the modification that may be required for your physical environment. You may have to change a few places here and there within the total physical environment. So that also is another investment that you may have to make. But then if it justifies benefits more than the cost, then there should be no hesitation on your part as service providers to go for this kind of a strategy. Other strategies, like I said, there could be a combination of these three fundamental strategies. For example, I already have talked about a multi-site, multi-service strategy. This is a strategy whereby you have more than one site and you sell more than one service. And this happens to be one of the most popular strategies. Talking about a fast food chain, we know it happens to be multi-site and it also happens to be multi-service, because it may like to add the drive-through service at the same place where they are selling the dine-in facilities, and they may also like to add that delivery service so that food could be delivered to your homes or place of work. So look at the peripherals and the kinds of services which are interrelated and stem from the basic core, but the fact remains that the multi-site and multi-service strategy is a very popular strategy. You can also get into the multi-site and multi-segment, but then it is quite very challenging. However, the fact is you have to pick a strategy not because you have a liking for it or a preference for it. You have to go for a certain strategic formulation because your circumstances and situation demand that. If you happen to be in a business whose operational position demand that you go for a multi-segment strategy, then you have to go for that. And when you expand in terms of sites, you add that dimension also. So talking about which strategy to follow, all I can say is that you have to look at your own situation, and in relation to the nature of the service that you are selling, you pick one of the strategies. And the three fundamental types are the ones I've just talked about, and others could be a combination of these three. Like I said, the multi-site and multi-segment, multi-site with multi-service, and so on and so forth. The important lesson of this learning is that whatever strategy we employ, we have to make a few things certain. And number one is we have to have total control of the overhead costs. We have to stay as efficient as we are. As a matter of fact, we have to be more efficient when we go multi-site, because we can reap the benefits of specialization and division of labor, because we specialize in having all that stuff in so many different sites who are really geared toward rendering that particular component of the service in which they specialize. We also have to make sure that return on investment also remains very healthy. So as long as we can assure all these factors that I've just talked about, we should be all set with exercising any strategy which we think suits our needs. With that, I would now like to talk about another concept which is very closely related to strategies, and in particular the multi-site strategy. Because these strategies are all about the growth and expansion, we have to see and learn all those the ways and means whereby we can grow and expand. Franchising is a very popular concept in terms of growth and expansion, and we have to learn what franchising is all about. Well, the franchising basically is all about the selling a service concept to a third party who agrees to operate and establish your service selling as per your standards, meaning the standards of the franchisor. So in other words, the one who sells the concept of a service is the franchisor, and the one who buys the concept to establish that service on the lines as franchisor wants is the franchisee. It is a rapid way of growing, and that is why it has become quite very popular among all those service sellers who sell something very highly standardized. It may not work as well in those services which are not standardized or which can be customized to be more precise. There are certain benefits and there are certain disadvantages as well. Let's take a look at those one by one. The first advantage which this kind of relationship offers to providers is that the franchisor does not have to invest his own capital. The capital is injected into the business by the franchisee, and therefore it saves the money on part of the franchisor and becomes a way of the growing by not investing your own capital. The other benefit which this relationships offers is that franchisee, in most of the cases, brings with him experienced management. The fact is, until the time a franchisee has experienced management which understands that particular line for which the franchisee aspires to be the business partner, the business should not be initiated in the first place. So we can say that because of the experience of the management which a franchisee has on his side, it becomes a venture free of bigger risks. And there are greater chances of success because the capital is invested by the franchisee, and it is franchisee's management, which of course has to be trained by the franchisor according to his standards. But the chances are the relationship will work in a well-coordinated manner. So we can say that out of this relationship, a great advantage stems for the franchisee who does not really have to face the kind of risk he would have faced if he were to start his own independent business. Yet, in other words, we can say that the franchisee is in a position to make use of the brand leveraging, because nobody would like to go for a franchise until the time the brand of the franchisor is a strong brand in the marketplace, and the chances of success are very high. So we can say that it is this very concept which entices franchisees towards something which is proven in the marketplace and which carries a business plan which already has been a success. And that is why I say that the franchisee is in a position to work with something which already is leveraged, meaning the service brand and the business itself. It is because of this particular reason that the most of the franchises which are initiated all over the world are mostly a success. The failure rate of the franchises is just about 5%, whereas the failure rate of independent businesses anywhere in the world is within the range of 65 to 70% within the first 3 to 5 years. So there are great chances of your business folding up within the first 3 to 5 years if you were to start your business independently. And that is why many people find it very safe to go for a franchise. Also, the franchisors offer advertising and promotional opportunities to the franchisees. The franchisees they do not really have to worry for these kind of costs. However, it is not for free. The franchisors ask for a certain fee for rendering all that I've talked about. And the fees generally range between 2 to 3% of the profitability, or it can be anything which is mutually agreeable between the franchisor and the franchisee. There's no hard and fast rule, but of course there is a rule of thumb, and that is what I talked about. Let's take a look at the disadvantages of this particular relationship. It is generally said that the level of profitability for both franchisor and the franchisee is not as high as it is for independent businesses. But then the good service brand will more than offset this lower side of profitability by very high level of income if you are dealing with a great brand, which happens to be the case with so many different fast food chains. And it also could be the case in so many other industries of similar nature. Quality control could be another challenge because the franchisor might look at the whole thing from his vantage point, whereas the franchisee may not agree with the franchisor 100%, thus causing kind of a gap between the two. Another challenge or disadvantage which this relationship carries is the motivation factor. The franchisees at times are not as motivated because they think they are really constrained in terms of their the liberty. They find themselves limited to the certain the services, and when they feel they cannot add a very profitable and attractive peripheral, they feel kind of unmotivated. So These are the kind of the disadvantages which this relationship might offer to both the franchisor and franchisee. But the fact remains, overall, at the end of the day, both stand to gain. It is a huge advantage of not having the responsibility of investing in way of the capital goods and letting somebody else do that. And the profitability can always be offset by a higher level of income, like I said. So the limitations have got to be viewed as against the benefits which this relationship offers, which I would say are much greater than the limitations. And that is why the concept is so very popular. And the one fact remains that franchising basically works when people, the businesses opt for the position of cost efficiency, where the standardization is the name of the game, and that is why the franchising basically works in the fast food chains. That's not to say that it doesn't work in other areas, all those areas which are highly standardized. With that, I would like to call it a day because we are running short of time, and I would like to finish the area of distribution very quickly when we meet next time. Thank you very much for your attendance, and Allah Hafiz until then.